I am 103 years old. 103. I know what that number sounds like. People hear it and they think, what a life. What a long, full life. And it was long, I will give it that. Whether it was full, that is a harder question. One I have been sitting with for years now, in this small room, with the morning light coming through the east window, and nowhere left to be. My name is Kevin, and I think it is finally time I told the truth about how I lived without savings. I grew up in a home that was modest, but never empty. My father was a Lincoln Elementary teacher. He spent his whole working life in a classroom, shaping other people's children, coming home tired, but never bitter. He was a man of principle. He believed in education the way some men believe in religion, completely, without question. We were not wealthy, but we were never without books. Never without the sense that knowledge was something no one could take from you. My mother was different. She was restless in the best possible way. She had a small business. She made things, sold things, managed customers, kept accounts in a notebook she carried everywhere. It was never large. It was never going to make us rich. But it was hers, and she ran it with a quiet pride that I have always admired. Between my father's teaching salary and my mother's small earnings, the house ran. Not comfortably, always, but it ran like middle-class family. And then, working my first real job, earning more than I had expected, became the third pillar holding everything up. I didn't mind. I want to say that honestly. I did not mind. I thought that was simply what you did when you were the one earning. When I was in my late 20s, I married a woman named Margaret. Margaret was calm in a way I had never encountered before. Not passive, calm. There is a difference. She saw things clearly. She didn't panic when things were hard. She just stood steady and figured out what came next. From the very beginning, she gave. Not because anyone asked her to, because that was simply who she was. When my sister Dorothy needed things, Margaret never made a face or asked why we were always the ones helping. When my brother Raymond arrived, and Raymond arrived often, she fed him, listened to him, made him feel welcome. She stood beside me in every decision I made about the family without complaint, without condition. She was the kind of woman who made generosity look effortless. It was not effortless. I understand that now. I just didn't think to ask her back then. The business started doing well in my late 30s. For years I had worked a small job, enough to contribute, not enough to transform anything. But when the business found its footing, everything changed. Money came in steadily, and I felt, for the first time, something close to relief. Not pride, relief. Because with money came the ability to do what I had always quietly wanted, to make sure no one around me was struggling. My mother's business had its slow seasons. When it did, I covered the gap without being asked. My father's pension didn't stretch to everything he needed in retirement, so I stretched it for him. This was not a burden to me. It felt right. It felt like returning something. Dorothy, my sister, I bought her a phone, the good kind. When she said she needed a laptop, I bought that without hesitation. She was my sister. Raymond, my brother, phones, electronics, whatever he needed. One year I organized a family trip. Took everyone, my parents, my siblings, Margaret. I wanted them to see something beyond the neighborhood we had all grown up in. I wanted them to have a memory that didn't involve hardship. My mother sat by the window of the hotel room that first evening and looked out at the view and didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Kevin, your father and I never imagined this." I thought I had done something permanent that day. I thought I had built something that would hold. Margaret watched all of this and never once asked me to slow down. Never once said, "What about us? What about later?" She simply stood beside me and gave alongside me and trusted that I knew what I was doing. I did not know what I was doing, but I think providing is always a good idea. Giving is always a sign of love. Then the business failed. Not suddenly. Slowly, the way trust erodes, the way a foundation cracks before the wall falls. One contract gone, then another. A partner who made decisions I hadn't agreed to. A market that shifted faster than I could follow. Debts that arrived all at once. Within 2 years, most of what I had built was gone. My father's pension was still coming in. My mother's small business was still running, smaller than ever, but still hers, still turning. And Margaret found extra work, quietly, without drama. She managed the household on what little remained. She stretched meals. She canceled small luxuries without mentioning it. She sat with me at night when I couldn't sleep, and she did not offer false hope or hollow reassurance. She just stayed. Just stayed. In those months, I found out the shape of things. My brother Raymond stopped calling. The excuses came first. Busy, hectic, would visit soon. Then silence. I heard through distant relatives that he was doing fine in his own life. He had simply adjusted to a version of Kevin that had nothing left to give, and found that version uninteresting. My mother stayed. She still had her small business. She didn't have much, but she called every week without fail. She came when she could. She sat in my kitchen and drank tea and talked about ordinary things, and in doing so told me, without words, that I was still her son regardless of what I had or hadn't anymore. My father, quiet and steady in his retirement, did the same. He asked about my health, not my finances. He treated me like a person, not a source. And Margaret, my wife, she never once made me feel like a failure. That is no small thing. I want you to understand that. When a man has given everything and watched it not be enough, and the people he gave to disappear, the one thing that can destroy him completely is the person closest to him confirming his worst fear about himself. She never did that. Not once. She looked at me the same way she always had. Steady, clear, present. I did not deserve that steadiness, but I held on to it like a man holds a rope in deep water. When the hands were empty, most people left. The ones who stayed had never needed what was in my hands. Margaret and I, we had good years after the rebuilding, quieter years. We traveled less and sat more. We talked more honestly than we ever had when things were busy. I learned things about her in our late years that I should have known in our early ones, if I had only been paying attention. She passed 11 years ago. 91 years old. Early morning, quietly. I held her hand and said what I could. It was not enough. It never would have been. But she knew. I believe she knew. The room has been different since then. Not just quieter. Different. I am 103 years old. The east window gives me light every morning. A woman named Maria brings tea and asks if the light was good today. That small kindness. That is what my life has come down to. And I have stopped pretending that isn't meaningful. If you are younger than me, and you are, listen. Not because I want to instruct you, but because I have walked this road to its very end, and I can see clearly now what I could not see at 30 or 50 or even 70. Help your family. Give when you can. But save something for yourself. Not just money, though money matters, and its absence in hard times will teach you things no one wants to learn. Save your time. Save your presence. Save the parts of yourself you keep handing to people who will not be there when your hands are finally empty. Because they will empty. And on that day, you will find out who actually loves you. But my mother called every week without fail, and Margaret, my wife, looked at me on the worst nights of my life and did not look away. These two people, that was my real life. Everything else was transaction. I just spent too many years mistaking transaction for love. I am at peace now, not because everything went right, because I finally understand what mattered. My mother's loyalty, my father's quiet dignity, Margaret's love that stayed through everything. That was enough. I just wish I had known sooner what enough looked like. That is all. That is everything that spend on right people and save the money for later, because some people never accept what you did good for them. They only thought it's your duty to give always, not your good nature. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel. If you want to share your own story, the link is in the description. Your story may be next.